Kia ora, good evening, and welcome to our latest installment of Critics in Cars Staying Home.
And we don't just watch old movies during lockdown, we watch new movies too. And what did we watch this time?
So we've just watched a documentary called Bob Ross.
Happy Accidents, Betrayal, and Greed. We looked up the title to try to remember
That's
it
right.
because it's not particularly catchy.
So Bob Ross, Happy Accidents, Betrayal, and Greed.
Now, there are two types of people watching. People are like, oh my God, there's a Bob Ross documentary. And people are like, who is Bob Ross? We'll speak to the latter for the moment. Bob Ross is an American painter who became famous for hosting a show about teaching people how to paint on public television in America, where he would paint an entire landscape painting in roughly a half hour.
Amazing.
And he
This is
became
around
famous
in
for
the
his soothing voice.
1970s, 80s?
Yep, going up to the early 90s.
Right.
Yes.
Soothing voice is right. His soothing voice and his permed afro hair, and a really lovely, encouraging way that literally said to the viewer, you too can do this. Pick up a paintbrush, give it a go, follow my lead, and you can become a creator, which is a lovely message.
And he was almost as lovely behind the scenes as he seemed to be, and he was an inspirational, wonderful person, and it's happily ever after, right?
So that's the end of that. Or is it?
Well, I don't know. Did you remember the title? I mean, we didn't remember the title, but still.
Happy Accidents, which is his reference to the way that you might paint, that you're doing something on the canvas and then you think, oh, that's not what a tree should be. And he says, that's not a mistake. That's a happy accident. But then betrayal and greed.
So we haven't actually talked about what you really thought of this film, because this was all new for you. What did you think of it?
So I knew nothing about Bob Ross. So initially, as we've sort of touched on, getting to know this guy and learn a little about his life, and to learn as well that he probably was as lovely in real life, but like Tom Hanks or someone like that, was joyful in and of itself. It then gets a little bit curly because there are accusations of his being exploited by some business partners, and the film tries to tackle those accusations. It's not a spoiler, I don't think, to say that the business partners who are accused of this aren't exactly forthcoming in the film. I enjoyed the whole thing as an exercise of learning about a cult personality about whom I knew nothing. And I also thought that the intrinsic message of anybody can paint, just give this a whirl, was really sort of uplifting and delightful. I thought the film was really interesting all the way to the end, but I don't think it gives quite the narrative sort of expose or denouement that you really need sometimes from a documentary.
Yeah, I really found it a game of two halves. Obviously, it seeded quite at the beginning that we're going to have some unpleasant revelations as it goes on. But even with a couple perhaps less than savory accusations that pop up in the first bit, I think almost if you watched it and turned it off around the time that Bob Ross passed away, I would have been kind of okay with it.
Yeah.
But I think it's telling that the film is very one-sided and relentless in its pursuit of what it believes to be a
Justice.
series of wrongs done to Bob Ross's legacy by BRI, which is the company that perpetuates his thing. If you bought a T-shirt with Bob Ross on it or a mug with it, they've probably profited off it, so on and so forth.
Yeah.
And yet, even by presenting one side of the story, which is Bob Ross's son, Steve Ross, who's really one of the principal voices of the film, I actually felt they undercut themselves in trying to tell the best possible story. And it's like, well, if I'm not even fully buying into this when you're trying to do your best.
Yeah.
What are you trying to do here?
Yeah, so, I mean, maybe I enjoyed it more than you because I was getting a lot out of learning about it.
Yeah.
And they can't all be Three Identical Strangers or Capturing the Freedmans or Catfish and all those, or Tickled, or all those amazing documentaries.
Yeah.
But it's totally worth seeing. I do think, I mean, why wouldn't you? Was it on Netflix?
Netflix, yeah.
So,
well,
it's free.
I think it's just that kind of, it comes down to like, yeah, it's trying to be Tickled or Catfish, but it's...
Well, it just doesn't get the chance to go into that sort of third act territory that you need for a documentary when you are fighting for justice, and when you are fighting for the truth, and when you are needing somebody to sort of trip up, I guess, and incriminate themselves.
But I also think that part of it is that the people, and I'm blanking on their names, the couple that run BRI, are self-evidently, I would say, come off as not great human beings, and fundamentally, I doubt any version, any set of interviews with them would change my opinion of that. But they've done a great job of creating a business out of Bob Ross, and whether that's an injustice to Steve Ross, and whether Bob Ross would still be remembered if, because if the company had gone to Steve Ross, there's really not a whole lot of evidence on screen.
Do you know what I'm realizing? I don't think that at its core the film is actually ultimately about the aftermath, because Bob Ross does sort of mention the challenge for him of actually starting to lose his own sense of agency. He doesn't lose his identity, because he is the identity and he is the brand, but he definitely is quoted a couple of times as saying, standing at the easel is the only time when I am in complete control of something in my life. And admittedly, the filmmakers repeat that, I suppose, to hammer that message home. But I think that's interesting, so that actually this is about a man whose life was co-opted in a way. And it was co-opted in an area that he genuinely loved and was happiest and believed in and propagated to the world, apart from me, apparently. And that was really super meaningful.
Yeah.
But that it was not a utopian situation even for him. And so I'm suddenly realizing, to me, this film is even more worth watching, despite the lack, perhaps, of a sort of a justiciable ending.
Yeah, I guess as a documentary maker, I struggle with the amount of self-evident manipulation within the film, and that's really frustrating. I think there's a really great 60-minute documentary in here.
Right.
Actually, one that really dials back on that side of things and really explores the things you're talking about right now as well. And just this fundamental tension between doing what you love and then the business side of things is a very complicated one. But I think it's too busy trying to get scalps to explore the questions in a way I'd appreciate.
Sure. But I still think there's enough in there to see. Like I say, it's on Netflix, therefore it's free, sort of, if you get what I mean.
And what else are you doing right now?
Right.
I mean, American viewers accepted. Oh, wait, no, you've got a third wave. So, yeah, you guys should stay home, too.
Yes, and watch it. And also because it's about a beloved icon for many people, and it's about prickly issues of ownership of one's image and brand and that sort of thing. I think that there's more to it, actually, than the filmmakers came up with. Maybe they took ultimately the wrong angle. So Bob Ross, Happy Accidents, Betrayal and Greed. Got it this time.
There you go.
Highly recommended.
Not highly recommended, but as I said, you're probably inside looking for something to watch. Till next time.